The great diplomatic starship Horizon Dawn floated through the blackness of space like a shining city. Its silver hull reflected the light of nearby stars, and thousands of windows glowed softly. Inside, humans from Earth moved quickly, preparing to welcome their guests. This mission was important. The future of peace between species rested on the success of the coming talks. Among the crew was Ethan Carter, a young human engineer. He was not an officer or a politician. His work was simple but vital. He made sure machines worked, reactors stayed stable, and small malfunctions never grew into disasters. Ethan was not one for formal speeches or polished manners. He liked machines more than ceremonies. Yet today, his hands trembled with nervous energy. The reason was not a reactor or a broken console. It was the knowledge that he would soon see the visitors from Valoria. The Valorians were one of the oldest known civilizations in the galaxy. They were tall, graceful, and proud. Their technology was beautiful, powered by crystals that seemed alive with light. Humans admired them but also feared them, because they were strict and valued honor above all. Ethan had never spoken to a Valorian before. He had only seen pictures and training files. The files had warned humans to act carefully. Valorians disliked informality. Every word and gesture carried weight. One mistake could insult an entire royal family. The day of arrival came quickly. Ethan stood near the docking bay, pretending to check a console while secretly trying to glimpse the aliens. A line of armored guards entered first, their silver armor shining under the docking lights. Behind them walked a figure who made Ethan's breath catch. It was Princess Lyra of Valoria. She was tall, her skin carrying a faint silver glow that made her look like she belonged to the stars themselves. Her hair shimmered with soft crystal-like strands, and her eyes were a shade of blue he had never seen before. She wore flowing robes lined with silver patterns, and every step she took seemed to command silence. Ethan lowered his gaze quickly. He reminded himself she was royalty. He was just a mechanic with grease on his hands. Still, his eyes could not help but rise again when she passed near his console. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Lyra's gaze was sharp but curious. She looked at him like someone studying a puzzle she had never seen before. The ceremony continued with long speeches, but Ethan barely listened. His mind returned to the way the princess had looked at him. He shook his head, trying to focus. She was a princess of another world. He was a worker, nothing more. Later that day, Ethan was called to assist near the Valorian shuttle. Something in the docking system had malfunctioned. A crystal stabilizer was flickering. The Valorian engineers tried to fix it, but their tools were made for crystal systems, not for the metal circuits of human ships. Ethan crouched beside the stabilizer, running his hands over the warm surface. He understood the problem quickly. A human power line was out of sync with the Valorian crystal. He opened his small toolkit and began working. Princess Lyra watched him closely. Her guard stood behind her, stiff and alert, as if afraid Ethan might damage their sacred machine. But Lyra leaned forward slightly, curious about what the human was doing. "You touch it without fear," she said softly. Ethan froze. It was the first time she had spoken to him. Her voice was clear and melodic, carrying both strength and curiosity. He swallowed nervously before answering. "Machines only need patience," he said. "They are not so frightening once you understand them." Lyra tilted her head, her silver hair catching the docking lights. "For humans, perhaps. For us, crystals are not machines. They are alive. They sing, do you not hear them?" Ethan hesitated, then smiled a little. "I don't hear songs, but I feel the rhythm, like a heartbeat under the surface." For a moment, her lips curved into the smallest smile. It was rare for a Valorian princess to smile in public, but she did. Ethan finished the repair. The stabilizer pulsed with steady light again. The Valorian engineers nodded respectfully, though they kept their distance. Lyra, however, stepped closer. "You are skilled," she said. "It is only my job," Ethan replied quickly, wiping his hands. She studied him as if she did not believe his modest answer. Then, without warning, she asked, "What do humans call those close to them? Words of endearment?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "Endearment? You mean like
Nicknames?
sweet words?" "Yes," she said, her voice steady but her eyes curious. Ethan laughed nervously. He had not expected such a question from a princess. His mind raced, and before he could stop himself, he whispered playfully, "Hey, sweetie." The moment the words left his mouth, his heart nearly stopped. He realized what he had just said, to a royal princess, no less. He expected anger, maybe even punishment. The guards stepped forward, hands on their weapons, but Lyra did not frown. Instead, her cheeks glowed faintly with silver blush. She looked directly at him, and in a soft voice that carried both surprise and warmth, she replied, "Yes, darling." For a second, time itself seemed to pause. The guards looked confused. The Valorian engineers exchanged shocked glances. Ethan stared at her, unable to believe what he had heard. Then Lyra laughed. It was not a cold or distant laugh. It was bright, almost musical, and it filled the docking bay with warmth. Ethan, still stunned, began to laugh too. It was a small, nervous laugh at first, then stronger as he realized she was not offended. The tension in the air melted away. Even the guards, though still uneasy, lowered their hands from their weapons. The humans nearby looked at one another in amazement. No one had ever seen a Valorian princess laugh so openly, especially with a human. For Ethan, the sound of her laughter was unlike anything he had heard before. It was not the sound of a princess or a diplomat. It was the sound of someone who wanted for just a moment to be free of rules and formality. When the laughter faded, Lyra gave him one last look. Her eyes shone with a spark of amusement, but also something deeper, something unspoken. "You are strange, human engineer," she said softly, "but perhaps interesting." With that, she turned and walked away with her guards. Ethan stood frozen, his heart racing. He had come close to disaster, yet instead something unexpected had happened. He had made the alien princess laugh. He had spoken words that should have been impossible between them, and she had answered. As he watched her disappear down the corridor, Ethan knew one thing for certain. His life aboard the Horizon Dawn was about to change forever. The corridors of the Horizon Dawn were alive with voices and movement. Delegates from both Earth and Valoria walked with purpose, carrying tablets, discussing trade, or preparing speeches. For most of the humans on board, the Valorian guests were distant, almost untouchable. They walked with dignity, guarded at all times, and rarely spoke unless the moment was official. But for Ethan Carter, something unusual had happened. A few hours earlier, he had whispered a careless nickname to a royal princess. He had expected punishment, or at least anger. Instead, she had blushed and laughed. Since that moment, the ship no longer felt the same. Every sound, every sight seemed brighter, because he knew he had shared something impossible with Princess Lyra. Ethan tried to continue his duties as usual. He checked power lines, adjusted conduits, and monitored reactors. Yet no matter where he went, the memory of her laughter followed him. It echoed in his head like music, and it unsettled him more than any malfunction could. He told himself it was a mistake. She was a princess. He was a worker. It would never happen again. But fate had other plans. 2 days later, Ethan was repairing a coolant pump near the observation deck. The tall windows stretched across the wall, revealing endless space beyond. While tightening a bolt, he heard soft footsteps. He looked up and froze. Princess Lyra stood at the entrance without her usual escort of guards. She wore simpler robes this time, flowing but less decorated. Her crystal-lined hair shimmered under the dim lights. She looked at him with calm eyes, as if she had expected him to be there. "Human engineer," she said softly. Ethan quickly stood, wiping his hands on his uniform. "Princess, I did not expect—" "You may call me Lyra when we are alone," she interrupted. Her words startled him more than any malfunction. A princess offering her name without title was a sign of trust, maybe even rebellion against her own customs. Ethan nodded carefully. "Lyra, then. How can I help you?" She walked closer, her steps light and graceful. She stopped near the window, gazing out at the stars. "Your people see the stars as places to visit. To us, they are rivers of memory. Every light is tied to our history." Ethan followed her gaze. "For us, they are challenges. Something to reach, something to learn from. We dream of touching them." Lyra turned her head, studying him. "That is why you interest me. Humans treat the unknown not with fear, but with hunger." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes hunger is what keeps us alive." Curiosity, too. Her lips curved in the smallest smile. Then silence fell between them. Not uncomfortable, but filled with unspoken thoughts. Ethan returned to his pump, tightening the last bolt. He expected her to leave, but instead she asked, "Do humans always speak with such casual warmth, even with those far above their station?" Ethan laughed softly. "Not always. Some humans bow, some follow rules. Me? I just speak the way I know, maybe too casually at times." Lyra tilted her head. "Like when you called me sweetie." Ethan's hands froze. He felt his cheeks burn. That was a mistake. I should not have. It was bold," she said, cutting him off. "Bold but honest. No one has ever spoken to me that way, not even my own people." Ethan looked at her in surprise. "Not even friends or family?" "My life has no friends," Lyra said quietly. "Only duty. Every word I hear is chosen carefully, shaped by fear of offense. When you spoke to me, you did not think of politics. You only thought as a person." Her voice carried both sadness and longing. Ethan set down his tools and faced her. "Then maybe what you need is someone who does not see a princess, only a person." Her silver blue eyes met his. For a moment, the distance between them shrank, and Ethan felt the weight of her loneliness. But just as quickly, her calm mask returned. "You are unusual, Ethan Carter," she said softly. "And perhaps dangerous." "Dangerous," he repeated. "Yes," she answered. "Because if my council learns of these meetings, they will say you dishonor me. They will say I dishonor myself." Ethan nodded. "Then maybe we should not meet like this." But Lyra's next words surprised him. "No, we will meet, because I want to hear laughter again." Ethan's chest tightened. He could not say no. From that day on, Princess Lyra began finding reasons to appear near Ethan. Sometimes she walked past the engine rooms pretending to inspect human machines. Sometimes she visited the observation deck, claiming to study star maps. Other times, she simply appeared without excuse, standing quietly beside him while he worked. At first, the guards grew suspicious, but Lyra dismissed them with a single command. Valorian guards were sworn to obey royalty, so they obeyed, though uneasily. Rumors began to spread among the crew. Whispers filled the halls. The human engineer and the alien princess were seen together too often, speaking too freely. Ethan tried to ignore the whispers, but they weighed on him. He knew this friendship was dangerous. He knew one wrong step could destroy the peace mission. Yet when Lyra laughed at his clumsy jokes, or when she asked endless questions about human life, he forgot the danger. She wanted to know everything. What was a picnic? Why did humans give flowers as gifts? Why did they hold hands when walking? Ethan explained as best he could, sometimes embarrassed, sometimes amused. In return, Lyra shared her world. She spoke of crystal cities that shone like mountains of light, of rituals where thousands sang together until the ground itself seemed to glow, and of her secret wish to escape the weight of her crown. The more they spoke, the closer they grew. And slowly, their words became more playful. One evening, when Ethan teased her about being too serious, she answered with the same words that had first bound them together. "Yes, darling." Her cheeks glowed faintly again, and Ethan laughed until the sound filled the room. That laughter became their secret bond, a bond that no law or council could understand. But not everyone was blind. The Valorian Council, who traveled with the princess, began to notice her absences. They saw her smiles, rare and unusual, and they whispered among themselves. Some were afraid that the princess was breaking tradition. Others feared she was giving too much attention to a human. One evening, Lyra was summoned by the council. She returned late, her face pale, her steps heavy. Ethan found her standing by the observation window again, but this time her eyes were clouded. "They warned me," she said in a low voice. "They said I must stop. They said if I am seen with you again, I will shame my family. Do you understand, Ethan? They think of you as a threat to Valoria's honor." Ethan felt a knot tighten in his chest. He wanted to argue, but he also understood. Then maybe they are right. Maybe I should stay away. I don't want to bring you trouble. For a long time, Lyra said nothing. Her hands rested on the glass, and the stars reflected in her eyes. Finally, she whispered, "But they do not understand what it means to laugh. They do not understand how it feels to be spoken to as if I am simply Lyra, not a crown. That is worth any risk." Her words left Ethan silent. He realized then that this was not a simple friendship anymore. It was a spark that defied rules, one that could either light the path to peace or burn everything in its way. And deep in his heart, he knew neither of them could turn back now. The Horizon Dawn moved smoothly through space, but inside the ship unease was growing. The human crew whispered in corridors, and the Valorian counselors spoke in hushed voices. Everyone had begun to notice the closeness between Ethan and Princess Lyra. What had started as curious glances and light laughter was now seen too often to be ignored. For Ethan, the days felt heavier. He wanted to focus on his duties, to fix circuits and engines without distraction. But whenever he saw Lyra walking into the engine bay or the observation deck, his heart lifted. He knew she should not be there, yet he could not send her away. Their moments together had become too precious to give up. One afternoon, while Ethan was repairing a plasma regulator, a stern figure approached. It was Counselor Vaynar, one of Lyra's senior advisors. His long silver robes shimmered faintly under the lights, and his expression was sharp. "Human," Vaynar said coldly. "You will not waste the princess's time with your trivial company." Ethan straightened, tightening his jaw. "With respect, Counselor, the princess chooses where she spends her time. I do not command her." Vaynar's eyes narrowed. "A mechanic should know his place. A princess is not your companion. If you continue this path, you will face consequences you cannot imagine." Ethan held his ground, though his heart beat hard in his chest. "I understand your warning, but I will not treat her as less than a person. She deserves honesty, not fear." Vaynar's gaze turned icy. Without another word, he walked away. But Ethan knew the counselor's threat was not empty. Later that evening, Lyra came to the observation deck again. She noticed Ethan's troubled look and asked, "What happened?" Ethan hesitated before telling her about Vaynar's warning. Lyra's face darkened. "They believe they protect me, but they only cage me. I am tired of being treated as if I cannot choose my own voice." "You have a strong voice," Ethan said softly. "Stronger than they realize." Her expression softened at his words. For a moment she reached out, her hand almost brushing his before she pulled it back. "You make me believe that," she whispered. The next day, events turned more serious. The Horizon Dawn's alarms blared suddenly. Red lights filled the corridors and crew members ran to their stations. Ethan rushed to the control deck and found officers in chaos. A small explosion had ripped through one of the storage bays. Luckily, no one was hurt, but the damage was clear. Security quickly declared it sabotage. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some pointed at human crew, others at Valorian guards. Distrust filled the air. The peace mission itself seemed at risk. Ethan went to inspect the damaged bay. While studying the wreckage, he noticed unusual crystal fragments scattered near the blast point. They did not match any human equipment. Yet something about them felt wrong, as if they had been placed there to mislead. While he was examining the fragments, footsteps echoed behind him. Lyra appeared, her guards uneasy at the sight of a human in the wreckage. She dismissed them again and stepped closer. "What do you see?" she asked. "These crystals," Ethan replied. "They don't belong here, but they also don't look like yours. They were planted to make someone think Valorians caused this." Lyra frowned. "Someone wants to divide us," Ethan nodded. "Someone from outside. A third hand." Before they could discuss further, Counselor Vaynar entered with 2 security officers. His eyes burned with accusation. "So it is you, human. Found alone in the wreckage holding our crystals." Ethan raised his hands. "This is not what it looks like. I was investigating. These were planted, but Vaynar would not listen. "Take him to custody," he ordered. The security officers stepped forward. Ethan tensed, ready to resist, but Lyra's voice cut through the air. "Stop," she commanded. Everyone froze. Even Vaynar hesitated. Lyra's tone was sharp, her royal authority impossible to ignore. "You will not arrest him," she continued. "I asked him to investigate. He found what none of us could see. If you blame him, you blame me. Gasps filled the room. The princess had spoken publicly in defense of a human engineer, standing against her own counsel. The guards lowered their hands uncertainly, awaiting further command. Vaynar's jaw tightened. "Princess, your words may protect him today, but they will not protect your honor." "You risk everything." Lyra met his gaze without fear. "Honor means nothing if it silences truth." With that, she turned and walked out, Ethan following in stunned silence. Later, in the quiet of the maintenance bay, Ethan finally spoke. "You defended me, even against your own people." Lyra looked at him firmly. "Because you were right. Someone else did this. Someone wants humans and Valorians to distrust one another. If I had let them blame you, the mission would collapse." "But it puts you in danger," Ethan said. "They will think you've chosen sides." Lyra smiled faintly. "Perhaps I have." Her words carried more meaning than she admitted. Ethan felt it but said nothing. He only nodded, his chest heavy with gratitude. From then on, they worked together in secret. Lyra used her access to council records while Ethan examined ship data logs. Piece by piece, they discovered signs of hidden transmissions sent from the Horizon Dawn to unknown ships outside. The saboteur was still aboard, waiting to strike again. During those long hours of searching, Lyra often grew quiet, watching Ethan's hands as he worked. One night, when he looked up, she spoke softly. "When I was a child, I was taught that humans were reckless, that your kind had no discipline. Yet you work with such care. You risk yourself for others. It is not recklessness. It is something else." Ethan smiled gently. "Maybe it's stubbornness, or maybe it's hope." She studied him for a moment, then her lips curved into that same smile he had come to know. "Yes, darling," she said, echoing their private joke. Ethan laughed, and for a moment the weight of suspicion and danger lifted. But outside their small circle of trust, tension only grew. The Valorian Council whispered louder. Human officers grew restless. The Queen herself, far away on Valoria, received reports about her daughter's unusual behavior. And somewhere in the shadows of the ship, the real saboteur prepared to strike again. Ethan and Lyra did not yet know it, but their bond was about to be tested more than ever. And this time, the danger would not be only to their reputations, but to their very lives. The Horizon Dawn drifted quietly through the black ocean of space, but inside, tension grew like a storm. Humans and Valorians no longer trusted each other. Every whisper carried suspicion. Every glance held doubt. The recent sabotage had left scars deeper than the damaged storage bay. It had planted fear in every heart. Ethan Carter felt the weight of it as he walked the halls. Some human officers avoided his eyes, thinking he was too close to the alien princess. Valorian guards watched him with open distrust, their hands always close to their weapons. Only when Princess Lyra was near did he feel a sense of calm. Together, Ethan and Lyra had uncovered signs of hidden transmissions. Somewhere aboard the Horizon Dawn, a saboteur sent messages to unknown ships, but before they could act, the enemy made its move. It began with a sudden jolt that shook the entire ship. Sirens wailed, lights flickered, and the Horizon Dawn shuddered as if struck by an invisible hand. Ethan raced to the nearest console, scanning the systems. "Attack from outside," an officer shouted. Unidentified ships. They came out of warp. The main view screen lit up with the image of sleek black vessels surrounding the Horizon Dawn. Their weapons glowed red as they fired again, striking the shields. The ship trembled. "Shields at 60%, someone cried. On the bridge, panic threatened to break order. Humans and Valorians shouted over one another, accusing each other of betrayal. The counselors demanded immediate retreat. The human captain ordered weapons armed. Through the chaos, Lyra's clear voice rang out. "Enough, the enemy is not us. Look outside. They want us to destroy each other while they strike." Her words silenced the room for a moment, but fear still burned in every face. Ethan stepped forward. "She is right. But we cannot fight with the Horizon Dawn as it is. Our systems are too slow. The only chance is to merge human power with Valorian crystal energy. I can do it, but I need her help." The bridge erupted in disbelief. Counselor Vaynar's face hardened. "Impossible. Valorian crystals are sacred. A human cannot touch them without corruption." Ethan looked straight at Lyra. "We do not have time for old rules. If we do nothing, we all die." Lyra's eyes met his. In that moment, trust passed between them like a flame. She stepped forward and raised her chin. "I will stand with him." If the crystals must be joined with human machines, then I will guide them. This is my command, gasps filled the bridge. Some shouted against her, but her voice was final. Even Vaynar could not overrule her authority. Ethan and Lyra rushed with a small team to the reactor chamber. Explosions rocked the ship as enemy fire slammed into the weakening shields. The crew hurried through smoke-filled corridors, stumbling over fallen panels. Every step reminded Ethan of how little time they had. In the chamber, the great human reactor pulsed with blue light, its metal structure humming loudly. Beside it stood the Valorian crystal core, glowing with living silver energy. Normally, they operated apart. To combine them was unthinkable. Ethan grabbed his tool, sweat dripping down his face. If I link the output coils with the crystal lattice, it might stabilize. But the resonance will be unpredictable. Lyra placed her hands gently on the crystal, her eyes closed as if she listened to it. The crystal sings of fear, but it also sings of hope. Guide it and it will follow. Her calm voice steadied him. Together they worked. Ethan cut through thick conduits, sparks flying as he forced metal into new paths. Lyra whispered to the crystal in her language, her words flowing like music. Slowly, the two systems began to connect. Suddenly, a loud crack split the chamber. Energy flared, throwing Ethan back. He landed hard, his chest burning. Lyra rushed to him, her hand on his shoulder. Do not stop. You can do this. Her eyes were fierce, full of trust. Ethan forced himself up, gripping his tools again. Pain or not, he could not fail. Not while she believed in him. The enemy ships fired again, and alarms screamed as shields dropped to 20%. The Horizon Dawn shook violently. Almost there, Ethan muttered, locking a final conduit into place. Lyra pressed her hand firmly against the crystal, and its glow surged brighter. Silver light flooding the chamber, the reactor roared, blue energy twisting with silver streams. For a moment, the systems fought against each other, sparks flying, panels cracking. Then, like two rivers joining, the energies blended into a powerful pulse. The lights of the Horizon Dawn blazed back to full strength. On the bridge, officers gasped as the shield readings shot upward. Shields restored. Energy output tripled. Weapons powered with renewed force. The Horizon Dawn unleashed a storm of fire against the enemy ships. The attackers were caught off guard. Their black vessels twisted and broke under the sudden counterattack. One by one, they fell apart in bursts of flame until the survivors fled into warp. The ship steadied. The alarms grew quiet. A silence filled the air, broken only by the heavy breathing of the crew. In the reactor chamber, Ethan slumped against the wall, exhausted but alive. Lyra stood beside him, her silver glow softer now, her expression filled with triumph. You did it, she said gently. No, Ethan answered, his voice tired but steady. We did it. Her lips curved into a smile, and for a moment the weight of war and duty lifted. She reached out, her hand brushing his arm. Yes, darling, she whispered, echoing their secret bond. He laughed weakly, unable to stop himself. Despite the smoke, the sparks, and the danger, they laughed together. When they returned to the bridge, the atmosphere was transformed. Humans and Valorians alike stared at them in awe. They had seen with their own eyes how the impossible had been achieved. The counselors, who once doubted, now stood in uneasy silence. Counselor Vaynar's face was pale. You risked everything, he muttered. Lyra raised her head proudly. And I saved everything. The human captain looked at Ethan. You may have just rewritten history, engineer. Ethan shook his head. All I did was listen, to her and to the machines. The crew began to cheer, both human and Valorian voices joining together. The sound filled the bridge, not just with relief, but with the beginning of something new. Trust, fragile but real, had been born, but Ethan knew the danger was not over. The enemy had been driven away, not destroyed. The hidden saboteur aboard the Horizon Dawn was still free, and though Lyra had defended him and stood by his side, her people would not forget that she had broken ancient tradition for a human. As the cheers echoed, Ethan glanced at her. She stood tall, her eyes shining with quiet strength. In that moment, he realized that no council, no threat, and no law could undo what had happened between them. They had fought together, trusted each other, and saved everyone. Whatever came next, their bond was now unbreakable. The Horizon Dawn floated in quiet space, its systems humming steadily after the recent attack. The shields were repaired, the engines stable, and the crew slowly returned to their duties. Yet the mood on the ship was different. The fear that had gripped everyone was replaced by cautious hope. Humans and Valorians worked together side by side, understanding that trust had been earned in the fire of danger. Ethan Carter walked through the corridors, carrying a small toolkit. The events of the past days weighed heavily on his mind. He had survived sabotage, battle, and the scrutiny of Valorian law. Yet the most difficult challenge had been the bond he had formed with Princess Lyra. Their friendship had grown stronger, but he knew their connection remained a risk. He entered the observation deck and found her standing near the window, gazing at the stars. Her silver hair shimmered faintly in the soft light, and her hands rested lightly on the glass. She looked calm, but Ethan could sense the tension in her posture. "Thinking about the mission?" he asked softly. Lyra turned to him and smiled. "Thinking about everything. The attack, the saboteur, the council, and you." Ethan laughed quietly. "I have been thinking about you too. About how you trusted me and how we survived everything together." Her eyes softened. "You do not understand how much that meant. To be seen not as a princess but as Lyra. To have someone believe in me even when my own council did not." Ethan stepped closer. "You believed in me too. You stood by my side, guided the crystals, and trusted that we could save everyone. Without you, none of it would have worked." Lyra's smile widened. She took a small step toward him. "Yes, darling," she whispered, using the words that had first connected them. Her silver cheeks glowed faintly and her blue eyes shone with warmth. Ethan felt a strange mix of relief and joy. "We did it together," he said, "and we will continue to face whatever comes, side by side." At that moment, a group of Valorian counselors entered the deck. Their expressions were cautious, uncertain. They had come to discuss the future, knowing that the princess had defied tradition to save both the ship and its crew. Counselor Vaynar stepped forward, his face stern but measured. "Princess Lyra," he began, "you have shown great courage. You have defended a human, risked your standing, and yet the Horizon Dawn has survived because of your decisions." Lyra bowed her head slightly. "I did what I believed was right. The lives of many depended on it, and I trust that the Council will consider the future, not only the rules of the past." There was silence in the room. Some counselors nodded slowly. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Then finally Vaynar spoke again. "Perhaps there is wisdom in your choice. The old ways must evolve if Valoria is to survive in this galaxy." Lyra's eyes met Ethan's. In that glance he understood everything. The Council would not punish him. Their bond was no longer just a secret. It was acknowledged. Days passed and the Horizon Dawn returned to its mission of peace. Humans and Valorians worked together more closely than ever before. The repair crews moved in unison. The bridge officers coordinated seamlessly, and even the guards grew more relaxed around the human engineers. Ethan and Lyra spent hours together, walking through the observation decks, studying star charts and sharing quiet jokes. Their laughter, once forbidden, now felt natural and even inspiring to those who witnessed it. One evening they found themselves alone in the upper decks, the stars reflecting in the vast windows. Lyra turned to Ethan with a thoughtful expression. "The galaxy is vast. So many dangers, so many unknowns. And yet humans and Valorians can stand together. We just need courage and trust." Ethan nodded. "We showed them that already. We proved that hearts can be stronger than fear." She smiled, her hand brushing lightly against his arm, "And we laughed while doing it." "That may be the most important part," Ethan chuckled. "Yes, laughing seems to solve many problems." Lyra laughed too, soft and bright. "Yes, darling," she said again. And this time the words carried no hesitation, only warmth and certainty. As the days turned to weeks, their bond grew stronger. The crew of the Horizon Dawn began to notice small changes. Humans and Valorians shared stories and knowledge more freely. Children visiting from Valoria laughed with Earth children in the recreation decks. Engineers worked side by side, mixing technology and crystal energy to create new systems. The bond between Ethan and Lyra became a symbol of hope. Where others saw rules, they saw trust. Where others saw fear, they saw courage. And where others saw differences, they discovered friendship and understanding. The Queen of Valoria, observing from her palace on the home planet, sent a message to the Horizon Dawn. She addressed the Council first, then Lyra, and finally Ethan. "Your actions have saved lives and inspired unity," she said. The courage of the princess and the human engineer reminds us that tradition must sometimes bend to embrace progress. I acknowledge your bravery and the trust you have shown each other. Continue forward with honor and guide our worlds together. Ethan felt a rush of relief. Lyra's eyes glistened with quiet pride. Together they had not only survived danger, but had changed the course of relations between two civilizations. One evening, while walking near the observation windows, Lyra turned to Ethan and spoke softly. We cannot know all that the future holds, but we can face it together. Humans and Valorians side by side. Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of the galaxy lift slightly from his shoulders. And we will face it with courage, hope, and laughter. She laughed, and the sound echoed through the deck. Yes, darling, she said again, and this time it felt like a promise. That night, the Horizon Dawn sailed peacefully among the stars. The stars reflected in the windows, shining like countless possibilities. For the first time, humans and Valorians truly looked at each other not as strangers, not as rivals, but as partners. Ethan stood beside Lyra, their hands brushing lightly, knowing that the path ahead would not always be easy. But for the first time, he also knew that they would face it together. And whatever the galaxy had in store, their trust, laughter, and courage would guide them. In that moment, the stars seemed brighter. The universe vast and full of wonders, yet the most extraordinary thing was simple. A human and an alien princess, standing together, laughing and ready to shape the future. Their bond had begun with a whisper, continued through danger, and now promised a future full of hope. Together they had proven that courage, trust, and a little laughter could bridge even the greatest of divides. And as they laughed softly together, the galaxy itself seemed to listen and smile.